All right, so let's get going here. So here, this is just a sum up, so you can see it in written form, what I said earlier about the main Buddhist traditions. There's the Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. Yana means vehicle, okay, like the boat that gets you over to nirvana. And Hina, we'll talk about this more, it means the small boat, the smaller boat, okay, and it's actually a derogatory term. Anyway, that the Mahayanas developed, we'll talk about that later. Mahayana means the big boat. And Vajrayana means the diamond boat. Okay, Vajra is sort of diamond, and that's sort of what the terms mean. So those are the three major groups. We're not going to really be talking about Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhism. We're going to begin with early Buddhism and go on to Mahayana Buddhism, focusing more on Pure Land and Zen. Okay. All right, let's get going here. So this is a bit of an outline. We're first going to talk about the life of the Buddha. I'm going to maybe put this on present. So I think, yeah. The life of the Buddha, his birth, and his life of luxury, what then led to his renunciation of his life of luxury is the four passing sights, his then finding the middle way and attaining enlightenment, and then his turning the wheel of Dharma and founding of the Sangha. And that then gives rise to what's called the three jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Okay, we'll go through all that. And then we'll go on to his teachings, the teachings of the Buddha, not in this video, because it's going to be a lot there. I'm going to get a whiteboard so I can use that because it's heavy duty stuff here to talk about in terms of the teachings of the Buddha. And then from there, I'll talk about the rise of the Mahayana Buddhism and the new teachings that are introduced that are embodied in new scriptures. And then the major changes of the role of bodhisattvas, the concepts around that, the deification of the Buddha, the rise of the Pure Land sect, and then the influence of Nagarjuna's doctrine of emptiness and two levels of truth. That's very important for Mahayana Buddhism, and also gets taken over into Tibetan Buddhism as well. And then how Buddhism develops further on in China and Japan, and giving rise then later to Zen. Okay, and there's two main sects of Zen, Rinzai and Soto. So that's kind of the outline of what we're going to do here. Okay, all right. So to move to the next slide. I never do this right. Okay, good. The life of Siddhartha. So he's the one who's going to become known as the Buddha. All right. And so the dates that are usually given to him are 563 to 483 BC, as you can see there in present-day Nepal, the foot of the Himalayas in northeast India. Now, he's also known as Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni, especially over in China, they tend to use that term a lot. And Shakyamuni means that he is the wise sage, the wise one of a clan known as the Shakya clan. Okay. And but his name was Siddhartha Gautama. Sometimes you'll see Gautama written as G-O-T-A-M-A because it's pronounced that way, Gautama. And around his birth, it's held, and again, as I mentioned in the last video, these things weren't written down for hundreds of years. So there's some embellishment that goes on here. And it's believed that his event, his birthing, was rather supernatural in terms of what all went on here. And the story is that one night his mother, Queen Maya, and that he was, born into a royal family, she had this dream one night of this white elephant coming into her side. And then she woke up in the morning and found out that she was pregnant. Okay. And so it's believed here, behind this is the idea that Siddhartha, he was up in a heaven, a particular heaven known as the Tushita heaven, that he was waiting for the right time to come to earth. And that he knew, and it was destined in a sense, that this was going to be his last incarnation, his last birth. And so he had chosen the exact right time of when to come and into whose womb to enter into, right, in order to be raised in a particular context and family. And so it was all, predetermined by Siddhartha up in the heavens as to when he was going to come to earth and be born, right? That's sort of the story here. And so that's number one. The second thing that happens is there's going to be a special ceremony to celebrate that the king has a newborn son, right? So there's going to be a special naming ceremony and celebration over this, and people are gathered together. Well, what happens is that as there is this gathering, this sage, this seer, this one who could see and know things about the future and, a very gifted kind of psychic type of person, a holy man comes up to inspect the baby and notes on the baby's body that there were special markings on that body. And he then gives a prophecy, right? And he says, aha, this child has a great destiny before him. He will either be the greatest king that the world has known, conquering vast kingdoms and being the greatest of all kings, or if he's ever exposed to the realities of suffering in life, he will renounce all of that and become the greatest of all spiritual teachers, bringing liberation to all beings on this earth. And so he gives forth this word of prophecy before the Father. And the Father hears this prophecy. Wow, my son could either be the greatest king, but if he is exposed to suffering, he'll renounce it all and become the greatest spiritual teacher. Oh, no, he didn't want that. So as a result of this prophecy, the story goes, is that the Father then designed it, all right, the life of Siddhartha, to be one where he would not be exposed to the realities of suffering or hardship in life anyway. That he would grow up in a very sheltered life, surrounded by luxury, surrounded by anything he would want and all good things, right? No problems or difficulties or hardships of any kind, and that he was raised in this life of luxury, right? This all gets schemed up by his father, sort of the story goes. And so he grows up, he has a typical life, he gets married, starts to have a family, but he starts getting curious and restless. He wants to see the real world out there because he's always been confined to the palace grounds, okay, in this sheltered life. And so this is then what will lead to what's called the 4 passing sights. So the story is that he managed to sneak away at night with one of the servants who would drive the chariot, would help him kind of sneak outside of the palace grounds to go out there and see the real world. And so on one night as he goes out there, he sees the sight of an old man. He's all old and crooked and walking along, hunked over and doesn't have any teeth, right? And it's like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. And his charioteer, driving the chariot, he tells him, Siddhartha, this is what happens. Everybody will grow old. And it's just like, well, this is news to me. And so that was a bit disturbing. Well, then the next night they go out again to explore the world out there. And he sees a man that's become very sick, covered with some kind of disease and just, really diseased. And again, this is like, wow, what on earth is this about? And his charioteer explains to him, says Siddhartha, this is what happens to everybody. This is your destiny. You will grow old and then you get sick. It's like, oh, wow, that's crap. Okay. So then on the 3rd night, they go out. And what does he encounter but a corpse? Somebody being taken away who had grown old, got sick, and then died and getting ready for cremation. Okay. And again, it's explained to him that Siddhartha, this is our destiny. We grow old only to get sick and to die. This is our destiny. And so this is quite disturbing. Here he is, he's having a great life, partying, this life of luxury, but to realize that, wow, this is the destiny, is I'm just going to grow old, get sick, and die, to be born again, rebirth, reincarnate, to grow old, get sick, and die, reborn, to grow old, get sick, and die, reborn, on and on it goes. It's like, this isn't that great. So yes, I'm having a life of luxury here, but this is an illusion. This is temporary. I'm just going to have a good time now, but what about tomorrow? Because this is my destiny, is getting old, sick, and dying, right? So things start shifting here for him. Well, then on the 4th night, they go out. And here he sees a sannyasi, a holy man, a renunciate, an ascetic, someone who has renounced all engagement with this world, desires for things in this world, and a quest for luxury, power, what have you, but instead was on a path of seeking liberation from rebirth, to stop this cycle of suffering, of being born only to grow old, sick, and die, to be born again, to grow old and sick and die, to stop that cycle of samsara, the wheel of existence, right? And so he sees this a person who had, just a loincloth and a begging bowl. And again, his charioteer explains to him, this is what this guy is doing. He's seeking liberation from this perpetual cycle of rebirth, which is just a cycle of suffering. And from this, these 4 passing sights, he realizes this is what he must do himself. He must take up this path himself. And so that then leads to what's called the Great Renunciation in the Buddhist tradition, where he decides he must leave behind his royal life, the future kingdom, his family, his whole sense of identity of being a prince, and all that luxury, and to seek liberation like this. And so he has his charioteer drive him outside, and it all happens at night. He kisses his wife and child while they're sleeping and sneaks out at night, is taken outside the palace grounds, gives up all of his royal clothing, and takes on just, a robe, really probably a loincloth, the classic Buddhist robes that they wear today, and cuts his hair. This becomes a part of the Buddhist tradition, is to cut your hair. It evolves into that down the road. And he now begins his journey of seeking enlightenment. Seeking enlightenment. And he's 29 years old when this happens. And so he now begins the journey, his quest for enlightenment, his quest to seek release from future rebirth. And it's a journey that's going to take 6 years. So he tries what's available to him at the time. He first takes up yoga, which we saw previously, right? It's sort of the path of Hinduism. Taking up yoga, he practices it, he masters it, and he attains the highest state in yoga, right? Through meditation in the more Hindu way of meditating, the state of samadhi, right? And he concludes, attaining the state of samadhi like this, it just didn't deliver. It's not good enough. It didn't bring release. He didn't think that this brought you freedom and release from future rebirth. He was dissatisfied. So after having mastered yoga, he then takes up a second path, that of Jainism, which we'll be looking at later. And it's a path of severe asceticism. And he hooks up with 5 other buddies, all right? So the 6 of them kind of do this together. And in Jainism, they literally have a view of karma, right? How to get rid of that karma. The karma was almost like a material substance, like this goo that kind of latches onto your soul, right? And because you've got this gook latched onto your soul, that's what pulls it down into another material existence and another rebirth, right? And so they held to get rid of that karma, you had to burn it off through eating as little as possible, undergoing suffering and hardship, meditating in the heat of the sun instead of the cool of the shade somewhere, to like literally as you're suffering, it just burns off past karma, right? And that you literally can almost starve off that karma by eating as little as possible. And that was sort of their understanding of how to get rid of that karmic material that brought you back into another rebirth. So he took up the Jainist path, and that involved at the time, and it's that you would eat only what would fit in the palm of one hand. That's all you would eat for the day, and you would drink only what would fit in the palm of the other hand for the day. And so that you would just barely sustain this body, just barely keep it alive, right? And keep it going, and you just meditate, and hope to eventually undo and get rid of all karma, so that then at death, the soul is set free. Okay, so this is what he was doing. He was taking up this very extreme path of what's referred here as severe asceticism. And so that they even made, there's a very famous sculpture about this, the emaciated Buddha, where it's held that he became so thin from this that when you looked at his stomach there, you could see his backbone, all right? It's just, he was just bare skin and bone, and he was hardly alive, right? So as he's meditating and doing this path, it's like all of a sudden, it's like, ding, the light goes on. He thinks, you know what? I don't think this is working. I don't think this is the way of being set free from rebirth, by literally starving myself to death. How can I attain a higher state of consciousness, a more powerful, enlightened consciousness, when I'm literally deprived of food and I'm starving? Does that really clear the mind? Or does it actually fog consciousness? Huh? When you're starving yourself like this. So he questioned that this is the way. He started to doubt it, and he decided he had to leave this path because it was not bringing him towards enlightenment. And so the story is that he was in such bad shape, could hardly move and walk or do anything, that if it wasn't for the mercy of a local village woman bringing him some food every day, he probably would have died. And so she brings some food so he could kind of get some strength back again and start to move and walk and do things. And he decided, this is not working for me. And he leaves that path. And those 5 buddies that he was with, where they kind of hooked up doing this together, they kept on doing their thing. And they thought, Siddhartha, you pussy, you can't handle this, you can't take it. So they parted ways. They kept doing their path of extreme asceticism, the Jainist way, and Siddhartha went his own way. All right, he went his own way. And so he still was seeking enlightenment, seeking the experience of being set free from future rebirth and ending the cycle of samsara, the wheel of existence, being set free from rebirth, right? And so he starts experimenting with different ways of meditating. And he starts to kind of play with what becomes known as mindful awareness meditation, right? And this is something that's very distinctive to Buddhism. It's sort of their way of meditating. Huh? And so in what we talked about when we talk about Hinduism, there we focus, on the idea, you focus on the candle, you try to withdraw all sensory input. You don't hear the sirens going by, you don't smell those delicious muffins coming out of the oven, you block out sensory input. So there's no disturbances from the outer world, and you just get your mind just to focus on the one thing, like that candle, until, you break through to no duality, right? A sense of oneness, right? That's what it was, the goal there. Here, Siddhartha starts meditating with what's called mindful awareness, where instead of tuning things out, you tune into the present moment. So it's like you're always present in the moment right now to whatever is. And then you're present to the next moment, and the next moment, and the next one. You're always tuned in to the present moment as though it's there for the first time. Okay. So to highlight this, I just want to share with you an experiment that was done. Years ago, some people did this experiment on with respect to meditation, and they took a yogic type of meditator, okay, in terms of focusing on that one candle type of meditation. Then they took a Buddhist who did this mindful awareness, being in the present moment meditator, and then just an ordinary person. Okay, so there's 3 people, sort of the control person. And they had them all, like in their rooms by themselves. And at a given time, a gong would sound, a bell, gong, gong, gong. Okay, every couple of minutes or whatever it was, right? And so they'd hook up their brains to these, some kind of a machine, EEG machine, to be able to detail what's going on in terms of brainwave frequencies, okay? And so for the yogic person, or yogi, when he would hear the gong, there'd be some recognition of it at first, but eventually that would just fizzle out and he'd be able to tune it out. And so there'd be very little movement in the brain, okay? He'd be able to tune it out. Whereas the Siddhartha, or not Siddhartha, but a Buddhist meditating, he'd hear the gong and be ching, hear the gong get ching, hear the gong get ching. His brain would be reacting as though he was always hearing it for the first time, right? And the control person is how we tend to be. First, we really react, and then eventually it becomes sort of white noise. We still register it, but we're not able to ever totally tune it out, okay? So it's just to highlight the difference here. So this is what mindful awareness is about, is being always fully aware in the present moment as it is, okay? Because what happens is we're in the present moment, but then as soon our mind tends to water. We start thinking about stuff yesterday. We start worrying about what am I going to do tomorrow? What about this and that? And what about this and that over there? And what's happening here? And before you know, you were driving the car, but you weren't even present while you were driving the car. You were starting to daydream and you just missed the turnoff, for example. We do that sort of thing all the time. We kind of drift off and we're not fully here in the present moment. Okay. So this is what's typical, usually what's presented, that's classic Buddhist way of meditating is mindful awareness, just to give you a bit of a sense of it, okay? So this is what he starts experimenting with, is his own way of meditating. And experienced the sense that this is how the story goes, okay, is that he's about to break through, that this was really getting him somewhere, all right? Now, the next phase of the story here about the life of the Buddha and his path to enlightenment is that there is this evil being called Mara, okay? He's sort of equivalent to a type of Satan who doesn't want anybody to be freed from suffering and just gleefully wants to keep every living being in bondage to the cycle of rebirth and death, all right? And doesn't want to see this dude down here on planet Earth, Siddhartha, like, what? He is about to discover the way of liberation, to bring salvation to all living beings, right? It's like, we can't let that happen. We got to stop this guy. I don't want this to happen. I want people to stay suffering and stay in bondage, right? So the story is that as Siddhartha was under this tree in meditation, Mara tries to tempt him away and get him out of meditating. And Mara is able to take on various shapes and forms, him and his demons. This is what you see also in the West, and that Satan and the demons, they can appear in various images and forms is a common idea all throughout the world, really. So Mara wants to pull him out. So first of all, as Siddhartha is meditating, Mara with his demons would appear in front of him as these beautiful, seductive women to try to lure him and tempt him with desire. Right? So they're trying to evoke in him desire, lust. You want us, right? They're trying to evoke that energy of wanting, right? And Siddhartha is there in meditation. Mara with his demons, looking as beautiful women, trying to seduce him. But Siddhartha, boom, he remains steadfast in his meditation. He remains unmoved. He does not succumb to the temptation of desire, of wanting. Well then, okay, that didn't work. So Mara then shifts, think, okay, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to try to scare him. And so then he takes on the image of being this fearsome demonic warriors coming at him with spears and about to attack him. And so they're trying to evoke in him fear, fear like, wanting to run away, right? And those are the key thing is here in this whole story. These are the two primal energies that we humans face in the drama of life, where we're wanting and not wanting, aversion, fear, hatred, anger, pushing away, or grasping and wanting, right? Those two dynamics, wanting, not wanting, right? Greed, lust, desire, or fear, anger, hatred. We're caught in that drama. And the point here in the story is Siddhartha, he gets tempted with both of these powerful drives in the form of Mara with these demons taking on these forms, right? And he resists them all. He overcomes them. He's not tempted by these anymore, right? He has won this out. And so the story goes is that Siddhartha, realizing that he's being tempted, he then puts his hand upon the earth and he makes this vow and he says, I will not leave from this tree and from this spot where I'm meditating until I become enlightened. He makes that vow. And the story goes here is in the meantime, we have Mara doing this, but they're also up in the heavens. Up in the heavens, there are all the gods. And the gods are there looking down on earth. They think, oh, wow, there's Siddhartha. He's about to discover the way of salvation, the way of liberating all beings, even us. This is a key thing. In Buddhism, the Buddha is greater than the gods. Okay, he is able to find the way of bringing salvation to all living beings. And Mara is trying to tempt him, right? And there he is. And so they're watching from heaven and they're cheering Siddhartha on, like, come on, Siddhartha, you can do it. You can overcome the temptations of Mara. And Siddhartha wins, and he makes a vow that he's not giving in. Right? He's not giving in. And then the gods come to assist him, and the earth opens up and swallows up Mara and the demons, so they can no longer tempt him. All right. And the gods are cheering, yay! Siddhartha has broken through, and we're supporting him all the way. They're sort of like his cheerleaders. So this is how the story is presented, is that his journey towards enlightenment is a cosmic event. It has implications not for Siddhartha alone as an individual, but for all living beings, because he is going to find the way of salvation. And I always say all living beings because it will include animals, okay? All conscious living beings. It includes the gods, spirits of various kinds. It's for all living beings. And so this is what happens. This is what's celebrated, is he is breaking through to find the way. And so it's held that indeed he stays under this tree in meditation. And it's held that this tree still exists there. It's a place of pilgrimage. It's recognized this is the tree that the Buddha became enlightened under. Okay, it's a very old tree. And it's held that this is where he stayed under until he attained enlightenment. And his enlightenment took place at the night of a full moon. Okay, at the night of a full moon. And so then in the Buddhist tradition, this is always celebrated on a particular full moon, that this is the night when Siddhartha becomes known as the Buddha. The word Buddha means the awakened one, the enlightened one. It's a name of honor that gives that Siddhartha takes on, okay, that he is the enlightened one. So this is always celebrated in the Buddhist tradition. Okay, so a lot happens. So during this night of the full moon, it's held that he attains higher and higher states of consciousness during this night, and until he attains full-blown enlightenment. And enlightenment is usually depicted as it's a state of pure mindful awareness, where you're fully aware of the present moment and aware of everything. But while you're in total awareness of all that is right now in the present moment, you're also in a state of pure equanimity, meaning that there's no pull of I want this, or a pull of I don't want that. It's all equal. Okay, it's a total peace, a total calm, pure equanimity, right? So again, just to highlight here. So sometimes people can go into a trance state, and we'll see this in the history of religion. Somebody goes into meditation and they're in a trance state, and it's like you go like this in front of them. And it's like they're hello, nobody's home. All right. And they have done studies that, somebody's in a trance state, you can literally, and it's stories like this, I don't know if it's true, but you'll find stories like this. They've had chopped off their hand and they're just didn't even notice. Not phased. It's like hello. It's like they're zombies. They're not there. Okay. And so, yes, you can be in a state of not feeling pain, of not feeling suffering, but hello, are you even here? Or are you just a zombie? Have you been able to so block out those pain sensors, so gone into an altered state of consciousness? It's like you're on another planet, right? And it's held, no, here in Buddhism, it's held, no, you can be in that state of calm without reaction to things, but yet being fully aware, mindful awareness, okay, with pure equanimity. So to put an example like this, say you have a toothache, okay, and I've got a toothache, and then what happens? There'll be the physical sensation of pain, but then what gets hooked up with that is the mental and emotional and psychological pain that I'm in agony over this toothache. I got to do something. Get me to emergency because of this toothache. And there's all this drama around the physical sensation of pain in my tooth. And there's all this emotional pain that, nobody cares about me, my tooth. And, you got the whole spiel, right? And there's all this emotional, mental suffering and drama around the physical sensation of pain. Now, for the Siddhartha, say if he gets a toothache, he's fully aware of the physical sensation that is noted as pain. But it's not going to trigger, there's all this emotional drama of mental and emotional suffering, okay, over the toothache, is awareness, but yet maintaining state of pure equanimity. It doesn't mean that, oh, I don't feel any pain. The pain does not exist. It's an illusion. It's not that. No. It's real. It's there. But there isn't the drama of suffering associated with it. Okay, hopefully you guys are with me there on this. Okay, so this is kind of some of the differences here. So in addition with this, during this night of enlightenment, as he's progressing to the state of enlightenment, okay, it involved his acquiring what's called the 6 super knowledges. That becoming enlightened contained within it as well, that he was able to have magic powers. And what's meant by that is would be able to levitate. This is all the tradition story. Walk through a hill, walk on water, do these sort of supernatural feats of what's called magic powers. Okay. Then clairaudience means, he could hear a conversation that's happening miles away. Okay, it's like having psychic powers, psychic abilities, knowing what somebody is saying miles away. Clairvoyance is being able to see what's happening, at the other end of the city. Okay, so you're able to see and hear things that transcends your usual physical limitations. Physically, I can only hear, within, 40, 50 feet, whatever range, right? I can only see what's in a certain range of my vision, physical vision and physical hearing, right? But these indicate super vision, super hearing, right? These are superpowers that transcend the usual physical limitations that we have as a material physical being, okay? Same thing, telepathy is to be able to read people's minds, to know what you're thinking, okay? Yeah, telepathy. A knowledge of past lives. He knew, these are all the past lives associated with you, associated with me, associated with whoever, whatever, a knowledge of all past lives. So all of these indicate even the magic powers, right? I can't levitate, but because I'm limited to my physical limitations of Newton's laws of cause and effect and gravity and all that. I'm limited in that. So I don't have these superpowers that overcome the usual physical limitations. This is all that's involved here. Okay, I think that's very important, because this is what we see in the history of religion, is attaining these kind of superpowers. So then the last key, and this is the key thing, this is what's essential to enlightenment in Buddhism, is that he overcame the 3 kleshas. Kleshas is like the 3 evils, the 3 problems for humanity, the 3 key evil things that keep us in bondage. Okay, they're called the kleshas, are ignorance, greed, and hatred. Ignorance, greed, and hatred. And so at the heart of it, our problem, as I had already intimated, we're always greedy. We want this. We have this drive of wanting, lust, greed, desire, right? And at the same time, I want this. Oh, that means I don't want that. I want to be beautiful. I don't want to be ugly. I want to be rich. I don't want to be poor. I want to be young. I don't want to be old. I want to be healthy. I don't want to be sick. This is the world of duality we live in. If there's the one, there's always the other. If you want something, that means you don't want the opposite. Right? So we're in this drama of wanting and not wanting. And that drama is rooted, you would say, in ignorance. Is because of our ignorance, because of my being unenlightened, I am caught up in the drama of wanting and not wanting. And therefore, I am in the place of suffering. Okay, that is the reason, the source, the origins of all human suffering is rooted in ignorance. And that ignorance is what allows us to be caught up and always entangled in this drama of wanting and not wanting. Okay, the 2, wanting and not wanting, are like 2 sides of one coin. And that's the human drama, and it's rooted in ignorance. Once you become enlightened, it gets undone. It gets undone. There's no more wanting and not wanting. And you're in that state of pure equanimity, but yet also with mindful awareness present in the moment. Okay, that's the state of enlightenment. That's the key thing here, right? So it's held that although, so this is kind of experientially what's going on, but it's held that through his becoming enlightened, through his no longer being ignorant, is like, ta-da, he now came to understand the true nature of suffering. Why is it that we suffer? What causes the drama? How do we get entangled in this drama? What is the solution to it? How do we undo all of this suffering? How do we get out of this cycle of rebirth and stop karma and undo all this stuff, right? He then understood and saw how it all worked. Right? And this is going to become the basis of his teachings. Okay? This will become the basis of his teachings. So I'm just going to do a few more little things here, and then I'll wrap up on this one, because I know it's a lot of content here. It's, I think it's good, juicy stuff. It's all good, juicy. That's why I love teaching religion. It's such interesting stuff all over the place. Okay, so what happens next? He becomes enlightened. And it seems as though he wasn't too sure. Okay, now what should I do? Because I'm at peace. There's no longer a desire really for anything. So what do? And so what happens? He's in this state of enlightened bliss. And guess who runs across his path? But those 5 buddies of his, that they were a part of that ascetic Jainist journey earlier on, right? And they bump into Siddhartha, and it's like, holy crap, Siddhartha. It's like they could see, wow, you've broken through, haven't you? You've become enlightened. They could just see it about him, that he found the way. All right, he had broken through and attained this higher state of being. And so they come around him and say, please teach us, show us the way, teach us. How did you do it? What do we need to do? Teach us the way. So they congregate around him. And so he then he preaches the first sermon to those 5 ascetics in the Deer Park, okay, which still exists there. You could go visit it. And he has them surrounding him here, and this is sort of the picture there. And this preaching of the first sermon and gaining his first 5 followers, those first 5 followers are the beginnings of the Buddhist community, the Buddhist monastic community. Those are going to be committed to the path of the Buddha, to seeking enlightenment. They form what's called the Sangha, okay, the Sangha. So this event of his preaching of the first sermon, 2 things. He establishes the Sangha, the Buddhist community, okay? And secondly, through his speaking this truth and teaching it, he is bringing the truth of Buddhism to the world. And here it's called the turning of the wheel of Dharma, okay? And so the story then that develops, and this is where the word Dharma means something a little bit differently. It can have various meanings, okay, just as a lot of words do. In this context here, Dharma means basically the truth of Buddhism. And because Dharma, it kind of means the order of the universe, or the laws of the universe, right? As we saw in Hinduism, to follow your Dharma is to be in harmony with the laws and order of the universe, that according to the order of the universe, I'm born in this social class, and therefore it's my duty to do these things. I'm in harmony with the law of the universe, right? And so here, the law of the universe is seen more like the truth of the universe. And what is the truth of the universe? Well, it's Buddhism. Okay, Buddhism is the truth of the universe. Okay. And so what's going to be developed here is the idea that Siddhartha, yes, he discovered the truth about things, but this is a truth that has always existed. It's not like this is a new truth. Oh, no, because really, and this is a thing always in religion, truth is always seen as being something eternal. Truth doesn't change, right? It's not that he created some new truth. No. He just rediscovered a truth that is old and has been forgotten. So it's not a new truth. Buddhism is not really a new religion. It is the rediscovery of an ancient religion that's actually the truth of the universe, right? This is how, and you'll see this always in the history of religion, they try to sanction its claim to truth, because every religion is believed to have the truth about life, and truth doesn't change. It's there forever. So, if we somehow gets a new idea comes about, it's because it's an old truth that's being rediscovered, or is an old truth that's been distorted and we're fixing it up and presenting the truer version of it in some way, right? So this is kind of a key thing that happens always in the history of religion. This is what's going on here. So the story is that once upon a time, eons and eons and eons ago, there was an enlightened one in the past, a Buddha in the past, who had brought the truth of Buddhism to this world. And that's the wheel of truth was turning. Okay, the wheel of truth, the wheel of Buddhism was turning. The truth of Buddhism was in the world. But over time, that truth, it got lost and lost and lost more and more until that truth was totally gone. And nobody knew that truth anymore. And so the wheel of truth came to a standstill. It had stopped. And that was the Buddha of the past, the distant past. Okay? And now Siddhartha, he came to earth and has rediscovered the truth of Buddhism and teaching it to others. He now is bringing the truth of Buddhism back into the world and turned up, once again, got the wheel of Dharma, the wheel of truth turning once again. Okay. And so he is the Buddha, the enlightened one for this time period, this age that we're in, which is a long age. And then it's held, this is going to be the idea that develops very quickly here in early Buddhism, is that eventually the truth of Buddhism is going to be lost even in this world. Okay, it's going to be lost eventually in this world. It's going to get spread less and less and get forgotten, lost, distorted, who knows what. It's going to disappear eventually. And however, there will be a Buddha in the future who will come to earth and once again bring back the truth of Buddhism to the world in the future. And that future Buddha is Maitreya. Okay, Maitreya. He's the Buddha of the future. And it's believed that just as Siddhartha was in the Tusita heaven, waiting for the right time to come to earth, okay, to become enlightened, to become the Buddha in this time period, right now, Maitreya is up there in that Tusita heaven, waiting for the right time to come to earth in the future, to restore Buddhism once it's been totally lost and forgotten. He's right now there in the heaven, Tusita heaven, to come in the future, okay? So early Buddhism, pretty, as we'll see here, has the three Buddha: Buddha of the past, Siddhartha is the Buddha of the present, and then there's a Buddha of the future. Okay, all right. And so then we have these three things. They become the three jewels of Buddhism. The Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. The figure of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, that's the Dharma. That's the teachings, the truth of Buddhism, the teachings, the doctrines, right, of Buddhism. Dharma is the teachings, which is the truth, right? And then the Sangha is the community, the Buddhist community. These are called the three jewels of Buddhism. And so if you wanted to convert to Buddhism and become a Buddhist, you would publicly confess this, that I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, as a type of confession that would be made. And also it's something that's regularly chanted and said in Buddhist services, okay, and gatherings. Is a very common thing, okay? All right, so I think I'm just going to end there. I think that's enough here for this time around. Excuse me. And then we'll continue. Excuse me. Next time. Okay. So hopefully that all made some sense. Good. Okay. Ciao.